Raven Belasco, welcome back to Behind the Fiction.
I am so excited. I've been looking forward to it ever since our last time.
And our last time, it seems like forever ago because that was before you'd published your first book. So I've got lots of questions about the process of publishing your first book and actually getting it out into the world and then writing a second book. But let's just start by talking a little bit about the second book. The book is Blood, Sine, Qua. Do I have that right?
Yes, yep.
All right, so I passed my Latin test for today.
A plus.
And this is book 2 in the Blood and Ancient Scrolls series.
Yes.
Book 1 was what, 5 months ago? Does that sound about right?
Yep, that's about right.
And at that time, I seem to remember that you were part of the way through with book 2.
Yes, I had like a little jump ahead, and I needed it too because the book went crazy and there was a lot of work to be done pulling it into place. So I was.
Well, one of the things that you told me in preparation for this was you have a character who wrote himself into this story. So tell me more about that.
So we had, the usual cast of characters had come back, and then we had our new bad guy because, as one could guess, there was perhaps some defeating of bad guy in book 1.
You're not giving away anything with that.
No. I think everyone kind of guesses that's the case. And so we're running around fighting bad guy number 1, and there's something not coming together. And next thing I knew, bad guy number 2 jumped out of the pages of history into the book and said, I demand to get in on this action. And I couldn't stop him. So we all just ran around shooting at each other and hacking at each other with swords until it was over.
Did you? Well, and you said shooting with each other because in book 1 there was mostly hacking with swords.
Yes. Well, when you write about vampires, you think, you have to build how your vampires work. So what from vampire myth are you keeping? What are you discarding?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're thinking, how do I kill vampires? There's traditional ways, and then you have to decide. So, chopping off their heads is good. So you need cutting implements. Burning them, also effective. So in the first book, there was a flamethrower or two. But as I was writing about this, a friend of mine said, why are you not using any guns? Like, why is everyone running around with a sword in this day and age? And I thought, well, actually with guns, you can do a fair bit of damage, in at least slow down a vampire fast enough to, then finish him off in a more traditional way. So boom, literally, the story got filled with guns.
And then I noticed there's a gun on the cover. So that was interesting. Was that planned from the beginning to have this particular sequence of covers?
Well, when I realized that the series was going to become like blood and then a phrase from Latin, then I kind of wanted the covers to kind of be like, okay, we've got our protagonist and then the weapons that she's using in the book. So it wasn't, this was just a happy accident. It was like, okay, last one we had a sword. And so this time, we've got guns, let's put a gun in. So that was fun for me and the artist. And my Google results are terrifying forever though now. Like I could never have someone look at my Google results and think that I'm in any way a normal human being that should not be immediately locked up because it's bad. It looks bad.
Well, at least you have control over those results. You're kind of doing this to yourself.
Yes. No, it's all my fault. I accept responsibility.
It's good. It's good. So for people who may not remember, when we talked, the process for writing book 1 was fairly lengthy. You had this idea, you started writing, and then you wrote some more, and then you didn't write for a while, and then you wrote some more, and then eventually you connected with us, and it's like, okay, I'm actually going to get this book out. And then you really had to knuckle down and finish the book, turn it into a book, turn all these ideas into a book. And so that process all together, like from when you first started writing, I think maybe the first scene came to you in a dream. Am I remembering that correctly?
That's exactly right. Yep.
So how long, what was that process from the dream to when you finished writing book one? How
It was
long was
over.
that?
It was till I finished writing book one. I mean, it had kind of been finished, but it was not tight. Like it was still like a, not, it was, it was the first novel. And so I did that final tightening in preparation for publication with LMBPN. So that was over 5 years.
Okay. And so with the second book, which you were partially, you'd written some of it when we talked before, you had an actual deadline.
Yes.
So what was that like? What was the difference between writing the first book where you're just kind of like putting scenes together and then eventually turning it into a book as compared to, hey, I need to write this book and I've got a deadline of, just a few months from now?
There was a teeny bit more stress. But basically I just went into my calendar and I just put like, how many pages I should write each day in the calendar, and then mostly hit that. When life got in the way, then I'd have to be working on the weekends or try to double my page count if I could in a day. But even with characters jumping in on me without permission, I still actually was pretty good at that. Like I actually feel like, okay, I can be a writer. This is a job where I can like wake up in the morning and do my job and enjoy it and be decent at it. So
it's funny how often the second book is when that occurs to people that they can do it, because the first book, it's like, I'm kind of writing a book and I'm not sure what's going to happen. But the second one, you've got a commitment and you've got to actually do it. So it changes everything. So that's very cool. So are you, when do you like to write? I picture you as someone who writes this kind of thing as a late night writer.
I have done some very extended late night sessions, but actually, I hate to disappoint, I'm an afternoon writer.
Okay.
I wake up, get everything sorted. I take my ridiculous little dog for a walk in the woods, and that's actually where I work through what are we doing today. So I do actually a fair bit of writing, not in front of the computer, but just me and my dog walking along in the woods, and I'm going, okay, like this is where we left off last night. What are we going to do today? Oh, that's complicated. How am I going to handle this? And usually by the time I get home from the walk, I'm ready to roll on writing.
So that leads me to believe that you don't have this super in-depth plot that you're working towards. I don't mean a plot. I mean like a synopsis that you've put together ahead of time that you're working towards. It sounds like you're just kind of writing as you go, coming up with ideas.
It's organic,
especially if characters are throwing themselves into the book.
Well, that was a surprise. But no, I generally have an idea like who's going to be in the book, and where are we all sort of setting it, but and how it's going to end. But the middle bits, how we get to the ending, no idea. That happens on its own.
Settings. You mentioned settings. So it's kind of exotic. This book's you've got some exotic locales. So how did you pick them and why?
Well, I love vampire books. So many vampire authors I've read. But I'm kind of like, why do all these vampires from all over the world end up in the United States? Like, I mean, it's a great country, but, why are they all coming here? So, and then also just as a writer, I just want to get out, like I want to go explore. Actually, when I started writing the second, I thought that I might use writing this book as sort of an excuse to get down and visit South America. But then a sort of pandemic happened, and so that was not going to happen. So I had to spend a lot of time reading travel accounts, looking at video footage and just looking at Google Maps for Buenos Aires and Tierra del Fuego, which is where we ended up going. I actually in my acknowledgments thank the wonderful cave explorers who went down to Tierra del Fuego, because I could not have written the scenes if I had not watched their videos and been able to viscerally sort of experience what it was like to go through those caves.
Would you have had time to actually make those trips?
Well, I mean, I'm committed to my art, Steve. Someday in the future, I'll be able to travel again. And, then I'm going to just have to do research on the ground for the sake of art,
Yes, someone has to do it.
Yes, exactly.
And, all right, I have to comment on this stack of books on my image that's over your left shoulder, maybe over your right shoulder. Those are your books. That's yes. Book one there.
That
you have
book
there.
One right there. So shiny.
And I love the way that you have them. It's haphazard yet perfectly stair-stepped up.
Well, actually, you could say that's a synonym for my whole life. So.
Nicely done.
You ask about my writing style. There you go. That's me in a pile of books.
All right. What was it like the first time you signed a book for someone?
Oh, that was actually a surprise. A fan came over, a friend who is a fan, and had bought a copy of the paperback and showed up at the front door and said, "Would you please sign?" And there was a pandemic, so there was social distancing involved, but it was. I had to not cry until he left. So, and then I was like, oh shit, I need to work up a signature. I had planned to be doing this at conventions and stuff. So I thought I had all this time to work up like my cool little, sign thing. But and
then you have to come up with these pithy little things that you have to say before you sign your name perfectly and consistently.
Yeah, well, my real signature is not perfect and inconsistent, so I think, we can all handle that. That's definitely never going to happen.
So when you're writing, are you I don't want to go to chapter 2 until I've got chapter 1 perfect kind of a writer, or do you just kind of let it fly and figure you'll clean it up in the next draft?
Every once in a while, I get bogged down, and if I get writer's block, it actually can be fixed by just doing an extra dog walk, which my dog is quite happy about. But sometimes I don't really have the time to just drop everything and grab the leash and the dog to go. So I can also fix it by just leaving a little note to myself that is highlighted, like, come back here and finish this. And then I move on to the next scene, the next thing that I'm excited about. And so that sometimes will help me keep the flow when I might otherwise be frustrated and lose it. So there's a tiny bit of piecing things back together at the end, but usually not that much. The story, thanks to my little doggy, tends to flow, just in everyday's writing. I've had that time to sort of get back into it. And so the things tend to flow pretty well for me. I'm very lucky.
Now, I see you have these really awesome headphones on.
Yes.
Are you a person who listens to music when you write?
Yes, I should actually put up, I've found this wonderful playlist on Spotify called Beats to Work To, and it is my go-to soundtrack. The whole book was pretty much written on that. Sometimes I need to just go and actually do some jazz or something. Every once in a while, some classical, like some Mahler or something like that. But there's this one soundtrack for me now, this one playlist that just it's become part of the, like, when I hear those sounds, I'm like, okay, I'm writing now.
So it's a trigger to get you in the right headspace for writing.
Yeah.
I assume it's all just there are no lyrics, it's just music.
No, couldn't handle lyrics. My God. Yeah. No,
yeah.
it has to be lyric-free music. This one's just sort of a down tempo, very like modern kind of house stuff.
Well, let's talk about reviews for the first book. What was it like when the first review popped up? Well, not the first review from someone you didn't know. Because what was
It
that
was
like?
it was a great review, and so I was just like, oh, it's happening, and, like, it's happening. People like my books. Like, and I wasn't quite expecting it. Like, I went to Amazon to look, but I was sort of like, oh, nothing will have gone up yet. Give it time, and then there it was. Oh, and I was just like, my heart was pounding, and it just it made the pain of fighting to get published worth it in that moment.
And since then, are you a person who goes and looks at the reviews, or is it easier for you to just like squint and get a high level look and see what the ratings are?
I look for today. It's the day when there's so many hundreds of reviews that I can't keep up with them all.
Uh-huh.
But basically, I've actually found some reviews not on Amazon. So I make it a habit about once a week now to just type in the book name and Raven Belasco as a search term in Google. And then I'm like, oh, hey, look, it's getting out there in the world. And that's really good. I'm keeping a list of people who like it, so I can contact them in future for future books. And it's also just nice to see it spreading through the world and people enjoying it. That makes me really happy.
And thankfully, most people who make it to the end of a book are appreciative of the work that went into the book. And just as a reader, if you make it to the end of the book, that means you liked it. So you're going to mostly get good reviews. But every so often you get some trollish type review. Did you get any of those? And if so, what was that like?
Well, my favorite thing about the reviews that were 1 or 2 stars was one was really upset that there was too much sex. He couldn't like it because there was too much sex, and he couldn't bring himself to like the book, even though you can skim those scenes and just get on to the violence instead. He just, I think he said, I couldn't quite enjoy it. Then the really great part is the other review that I remember that stands out in my head is they said, this is not a romance novel. It's more of an action adventure. And I was like, they're side by side on the page, and it's just like, okay, I don't know how to hit that sweet spot then, because I put in lots of votes and thought everyone would be happy. But one thing I do remember from that review was that the reader was intimidated by the foreign languages that I put in the book as well. And I just want to say for anyone who is going into book 2 or anyone coming to book 1 for the first time, that I have at the back of the book a glossary of all the foreign languages. So you can I wrote the book so that if you really need to know what's being said as the reader, the protagonist, Noosh, figures it out, or it's explained to her by another character. But I also give you the chance to be as confused as her, hearing a foreign language and being like, what was that? Like, I give you the opportunity to either experience it, like, her confusion, you get to feel the same emotion, or you can flip to the back of the book, look up exactly what was said, and know when she doesn't know.
Yeah, which actually seems like a pretty good idea. I mean, it seems like a pretty good we're in the character's head. So if the character's confused, we should be confused.
That's how I see it. But on the other hand, some people are reading at the end of a long day and they don't want any more damn confusion. They just want to like be in a controlled circumstance. And I get that because I get long days too. So, for those people who just really want control of the experience, or just like, I'm not okay with not knowing, then just flip to the end. It's in alphabetical order. Just look up your phrase. You're good to go.
Yep, and you might find yourself just scanning through lots of them once you get back there because it's kind of interesting.
So I really love putting the vampires swearing in foreign languages because a lot of foreign languages have the most beautiful swear phrases that are completely different than English and can't even be translated to English. Um, so I have my vampires swearing a lot in their native tongue. And so putting those meanings in the back, there's a bit of humor in the glossary
Yes.
if you go back to it. So
Yes, the glossary is worth reading, unlike most glossaries in books.
thank you, kind sir.
All right. So you mentioned sex scenes.
Mhm.
There are people in reviews who refer to it as erotica. Would you refer to it as erotica, or would you refer to bits of it as erotica?
I guess bits of it as erotica. Although when I first started reading the paranormal genre, um, I saw it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So sex scenes that were just as explicit as any other scene in the book, just as descriptive. And so when I first wrote the book, and in the first book, the act of sex with the vampire is absolutely vital to the story.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see any reason why you wouldn't. This is like literally the most important things she's done in her life, and I couldn't see drawing the curtain over it. And it's a book for adults.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I know I'm a pretty open-minded person. So I'm sorry if the book, is uncomfortable for some people. But on the other hand, vampires have always been a monster that sex surrounded. The very act of drinking blood is penetrative,
Mm-hmm.
and in the Victorian era, stood in for the sex act in the stories. That was why the tales were so titillating. So to me, taking the sex away from vampires is counterintuitive. Vampires are the sexy monsters, and I kind of assume that people who are coming to a book with vampires want coming.
Well put.
you know, uh, so I could have censored myself, but I
Well, as you
really,
said, you want to be true to your art, and
yeah,
this is the way you envision the story. I read a lot of thrillers. That's sort of my thing is
yep,
thrillers, and a lot of thrillers are really violent. And I am not a super big fan of violence, but it doesn't bother me to the point where I won't read the books. I will, as you said earlier, I just skim through it. It's like,
yeah,
okay, starting here, blah blah blah, read a sentence, blah blah blah.
yep,
Blah. Okay, the fight's over. I can get on with
yep.
the story. Yeah.
So I guess you probably would have to skip through a fair bit of my books because there's very explicit violence as well. And that's actually the weird thing to me is that I don't see explicit sex as being different than explicit violence. They're both really intense things to read.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see why, like the reviewer who said there was too much sex, he had no trouble with the rest of the book. So it's like, well, why can I write in detail about chopping someone's head off, in the moment that the spine is severed and, really get gory? Why can I do that? But I can't detail like the experience of having an orgasm. Like what is wrong about the beauty of sex, where the opposite, ugliness of violence is a-okay. So
It's an interesting conundrum that we in this country have been dealing with for centuries.
yes. Thank you, Puritans. I appreciate that so much.
All right. I'm going to try something different with you as we close our interview.
Okay.
I haven't done this in this podcast before. I'm going to hit you with 4 questions. I don't even just like a second of thought and give me an answer.
Okay.
All right. Favorite book you've read this year?
See, now you're just going to make my brain go empty. So right now I'm listening to the Broken Earth series by N.K. Jemisin on Audible. It is some of the best science fiction I've ever read or heard. And the narration is stupendous. And it is being like every night. I listen to audiobooks to go to sleep at night. So this has been like at the end of the day, I'm really looking forward to it. And I actually have been starting the audiobook earlier and earlier in the evening just so that I have more time to listen before I conk out.
Oh, that's a great. Obviously, you like it if you're putting other things off so that you can. It's the equivalent, since we don't do that much driving around anymore. It's the equivalent of driving around the block 19 times before you pull into the garage.
I have done that. Yeah, no, we can't finish until the end of the chapter. I'll just go around the block again. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
okay.
So yeah.
If you could have a conversational one-on-one lunch with anyone living or dead, who would it be?
Well, living immediately is Samuel R. Delaney, who is off in New York, and he's my favorite science fiction author, and I have talked to him, but I basically transferred schools in college so that I could take a class from him at UMass Amherst.
Oh, neat.
And so I actually got to like go to his office hour and get some books signed by him. But I was just like, oh, it's nice to meet you, like totally dorky. And I would just really love to be able to sit down and have a meal with him and maybe actually say a coherent sentence in his company. That would be great.
Nice. Okay. What's one thing you've learned about yourself that surprised you during the pandemic?
I'm actually, I guess I'm not surprised. I'm only surprised at how much I am an actual recluse. Like, I do miss seeing my friends, and I really miss like things like going to the museum. That broke me the other day. Like I had to have like a little cry because I just wanted to go to the museum so badly. Which, yeah, now you know what a dork I am. But just on the day-to-day, sheltering in place is something I'm comfortable with. I'm not that much of an extrovert that I'm like dying inside. You know, I'm pretty comfortable with the new normal, except for the horrible aspects of it. But, I'm not suffering the really severe depression the way some people are. And I'm really grateful for that. So, but I thought, I get hit by the reality of it and how hard it is, and how hard it is with everything that's going on in the world. But me, myself, I'm actually like, oh, I'm just going to walk my dog and write my novel and, take care of the things around me. But I can surf this part.
It's a great time to be a writer. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Right, last question. And this should be an easy one.
Okay.
What's your favorite guilty pleasure food?
Oh, somewhere along the lines of, so in the area of mashed potatoes, mac and cheese, and cheesy grits, like that combination of.
That sounds like a combination platter from heaven. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, just all carbs and cheese all the time.
Yes, especially if you could just take a nap right after that. That would be
awesome.
Yeah,
absolutely. Take a nap with an audiobook. Yep.
All right. For those of you listening, you will find that book 1 of the series, Blood Ex Libris, is currently on sale for 99 cents.
Woo!
And so that's a great way to get into the series if you haven't already bought that book. Book 2 is Blood Sine Quanon. Did I get it right the second time as well?
Absolutely. Yes,
The author's name is Raven Belasco. If you have trouble searching on Latin words, search on Raven Belasco. And where can people find you online, Raven?
I have a website that's ravenbelasco.co, and I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter, Instagram. It's not, just put in my name and a whole bunch of options will come up to you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I look forward to doing this again. We always have fun when we do these.
Yeah, this is such a good time. I look forward to it too, Steve.
Thank you.
All right.